yeah, people are arguing across each other. And so you can never reach a conclusion if you're not arguing.
It is impossible.
But you're not arguing the same thing.
It's irresolvable. It's irresolvable. It's like there's two competing values, and you have to pick which one in this moment you think is more important. And if you're going to pick one, then I think you have to accommodate the interests of the other side.
Right.
In other words, if you're someone who thinks that trans women should not participate in the female category, you have to go out of your way to be an advocate for all other aspects of the trans agenda.
Yes.
That's your obligation. You have to be able to say, okay, I know that this is something that means a lot to you. I'm not going to back you on this, but I promise you I'll back you on everything else. And the flip side is also true. I think that if you are someone who wants that kind of participation, you have to go out of your way to acknowledge the importance that you're basically saying to people who care a lot about sports, and women's sports in particular, that I'm asking you to give up something here. And I will bend over backwards to make that sacrifice easier for you. There has to be that accommodation. And like I said, my position on this is I acknowledge both sides. It's really hard. I happen to be a huge track and field fan. So it's really hard for me to make the sacrifice of giving up the female category in that same way. But I also understand that that's a problematic position to hold, particularly for a group that is imperiled. And so, my answer is, for the moment, because I also acknowledge that my mind might change, right? I was writing about Caster Semenya 10 years ago, and I had a different position than I had now.
How did it change?
The science of people at that moment did not understand the degree to which this is a technical question. She's not trans, she's DSD, so she was intersex. The question was, if you suppress the testosterone of someone in that condition, do you level the playing field with biological women? There was a belief back then that you could level the playing field. Now the science seems to be that there's still a considerable historical advantage.
Yeah.
So it's more complicated, right? But that side it's super complicated. All you can say is, if you're going to pick one side, you have to accommodate the other.
I often find that we're stuck in these situations and these conversations because we allow ourselves to suffer from a lack of imagination. And the reason I say that is because we act like what is always was and will always be.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I look at people now arguing hard, the women's sports, and I go, if I was to rewind time and go back decades and decades and decades, I would argue that those same people would be the ones going, women can't do sports. Women can't, and we would see that. Do you know what I mean? There was a time when women were stopped from getting into sport. Like people were like, no, a woman can't box, a woman can't run, a woman can't, no. What do you mean women's sports? Women's public bathrooms. That was the one that blew my mind the most. Was in America, people used to fight against women using a public toilet. They were like, no, you go, what are you doing? That's for the men. You go home. What are you doing?
Was that to stop them from not going too far?
No, it was just this idea of it just didn't make sense because of the way things were.
Got it.
Same thing with black people. There was a time when people were like, so you're saying black people, quick story. My dad at some point ran a small little restaurant, would be a strong term. He cooked food for people and they came and ate at it. It was a tiny little place in Johannesburg, just outside of Johannesburg actually. And I asked him, I was like, oh, what happened to the place? He's like, oh, it got shut down. I was like, what happened? He's like, they shut it down because I wanted to serve black patrons and white patrons. Then I immediately was like, my father, the saint. What a legend. Then he was like, no, I don't care about the race thing at all. He's like, I don't care. He's like, it just didn't make sense to me. And he's a very he's Swiss German. He was like, this makes no sense. Black people and white people eat the same things and use the same cutlery and are the same. What are you doing? It's also terrible for a business. And what the apartheid government wanted is they wanted my father to build an additional bathroom just for black people because they were like, white people and black people should not use the same bathroom. This is scientific. That's what they even said. It's science. And then my dad was like, no, sorry, I'd rather shut down the restaurant because this is crazy to me, right? So he had his own reason, which I guess aligned with good, but he doesn't even accept it when I go, that was a good choice. He's like, no, it just doesn't make sense. Now, when I come back to the world of imagination, I go, if we acknowledge that the things that are weren't always, then we acknowledge the possibility that something new could be, right? The Paralympics is an example.
Yeah.
I remember when the Paralympics first started, like first started, people went, this is crazy.
Have they changed their minds now?
Now, have you seen how big the viewership is? Have you seen how big the endorsements are? You go to a city or a town when the Paralympics is on, the advertisements change, there's major campaigns. It's no longer even, it just moves over to the Paralympics. You get what I'm saying? And in the Paralympics, I found some of the most creative thinking because they went, to your point, how do we find a measure of fair in a thing that we've also invented in terms of fairness? So they're like, how do you say that a person missing a leg from the knee down, who do they run against? Somebody with the same thing? But what if that person has no legs, but it's only from the hip or not from the hip or an eye or a hand? And they were like, you know what? We're just going to work to figure this thing out. We're just going to work to figure this thing out. Because I think whoever was organizing this, remembered the original idea of what the sport was supposed to be. It was a competition between people, and they were participating in something that we've imagined. It's not real, guys. Like, this is not, do you know what I mean? It's not gravity. The rules and the lines that we draw on a field.
There's a wonderful quote to this very point, that sport is the willing acceptance of arbitrary constraints.
Yes, that's exactly it. So here's an example I was thinking of when I was going through this. I went, we make it seem like in some sports, it's just man, woman, right? That's it. But then in another sport, we'll go, no, it's not just man, woman, it's also age. Age is important. Age, yes, the under 16 World Cup. Oh, why do we have a different category for? Well, they're younger. So who says they should get a different category? But we accept that, right? Boxing for me is probably one of the craziest.
With the classes?
Guys, at some point, and you can clearly see when people want to make concessions, they'll make them. If you think about it, technically boxing should have just been, you fight him, the winner's the winner. And then at some point someone went, bro, I'm skinny, man. Come on, this is not fair. I can't beat that guy. And they didn't go like, well, then you're out. They went, all right. We're going to make a class.
Skin to skin.
For these feather light people. You guys who has light as feathers.
I love that about boxing, though.
But this is what I'm trying to say.
But in running?
No, but this is what I'm trying to say is like, imagine we have a sport where you can come in weighing feathers all the way to heavyweight. We've given, and it's not 1, it's not 2, it's not 3, it's not 4, it's not 5. The weight divisions do this, they do this. And no one would say to you like, that's crazy, that's so many divisions.
Yeah.
I wonder why we never engaged in these conversations.
You know who the worst offenders are? The swimmers who, they've just created a sport to maximize the number of medals they give out. There's like the 50-meter freestyle, the 100-meter freestyle.
But that's what I mean, it's arbitrary.
It's like what they're going to have before it's all over, like 10 different freestyles.
Yes.
The 150.
Can you do it like a butterfly? I have a whole stand-up bit about that where I'm just like, what is this? You're doing it less efficiently and you get more medals.
No one ever uses those strokes outside of competition. That should tell you something.
You see? So now what I'm saying about these conversations.
You're getting strangely quiet on the question.
No. But what I'm saying about these things is we forget. I think we forget that everything exists in the time that it exists, and it becomes the norm because that's what it is in any given time. But if we stop imagining possibilities, then we're going to be tied to what is now, but not what could ever be. And so when that's funny enough, that's like when I think that's where you've influenced me in my life. It's like a Gladwell way to think. I always think is like, but where was it, and what is it, and what is it trying to be? The fundamental thing sports is trying to be is fair. However, some sports, if we're honest, are inherently unfair. Like to use like the Caster Semenya thing. I remember people would say, oh, but she has an unfair advantage. I'll be like, yeah, so does LeBron James. If you are like 7 feet tall, you have an unfair advantage in basketball. We should ban you from the sport. You know what I mean? If you are Michael Phelps, you have an unfair advantage that your body doesn't produce as much lactic acid. We should ban you from the sport. But we don't. We celebrate those people because we go, you're a freak of nature. Well done. But then when other people are the same freak of nature, then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And so I think that's like the thing that frustrates me in some of these moments is, I'm not saying there's a right way and a wrong way and a this way and a that way. But it's like, man, if you can find a way for more people to participate and you can make it as fair as possible, like the UFC does, like boxing does. I will watch 2 skinny men fighting, and then I will watch 2 of the bulkiest men fighting, or for that matter, women in UFC. And I don't go like, yeah, this...
You should have been the moderator of this panel. you would have survived much. Jesus, what was it? Do you have a good... What was I thinking?
But
no good deed goes unpunished.
No, but I actually think that's what it is.
That's what it is.
But I think in institutions mainly, and which I think sports federations and sports organizations are big, long institutions that have institutional memory of how things were done.
Exactly.
2 things will always alter the course of any institution. It's either the people dying out or commercialization coming in. Because I think when you add money, there's incentive now to accommodate and find creative ways to extract money from sponsors to sponsor the Paralympics.
You're not wrong.
You have the same with let's add more backstroke, side stroke, kick stroke, knee stroke.
Yeah, because they would get rid of that if people stopped watching it and there was no money. They would be like, all right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what people are finding a problem with now with the Olympics. People watch the Olympics and go, what am I watching? What is this?
Yeah.
Because also it doesn't equal out. So you see, if every discipline that exists in the Olympics, right, exists in the Paralympics, then I would be sold. If there was shooting but with people with something that they normally wouldn't have if they were doing, I'd be fully in. But when I feel like there's concessions being made and I'm like, I'm not watching the full thing. And that's the thing that I find with soccer fans is they watch male soccer,
yeah,
but then female soccer is, it's not real soccer, it's not real. They don't watch fully. You guys are not fully participant in football.
Yeah, but I think you're missing the point.
Football.
No, but I think you're missing the point though. See, I think this is where I think you're missing the point.
Right.
There are some people like Joseph Opie, our friend. We had him on the podcast. He watches everything. Everything.
Female under 16, young kid. Yeah.
But you see, before you run to that and you go like, oh, a football fan is inconsistent because they watch men's soccer, but they don't watch women's soccer. I also don't watch other leagues. I don't watch the Turkish league. They've got great teams, Galatasaray, Besiktas. They've got great teams that I see in the Champions League. I don't watch the Portuguese league. I don't watch the Italian league. Serie A has had some of the greatest champions that have ever existed. I don't watch the Serie A. I don't watch the South African league. There's many leagues that I don't watch. So I don't think we can quickly say, oh, you're not supporting women's sport because you don't watch that, but you also don't watch other leagues. Do you get what I'm saying? I think the more important thing to ask ourselves is why people are or aren't allowed to just like be part of a thing before we even get to commercialization. Because I'm not saying that everybody must watch the same thing the same. But what I'm saying is, if a skinny ass man is allowed to be a boxer, a man who weighs less than a bag of cement is allowed to be a professional boxer, a man that I can pick up and throw to the other side of the room. He'll beat me in a fight, boxing, but I can lift him. If that person gets accommodated, why can we not accommodate a trans woman is what I'm saying.